This is WAPE Channel 69 and The Honest John Show.
And The Honest John Show.
Hello, this is Honest John. Welcome back to this YouTube site dedicated to celebrating the Big Ape in Jacksonville. It's nice to be here. It's been a while since I posted anything, and the main reason is because I don't have any new audio for you. There are other reasons that maybe I'll get into a little later. Since I don't have any audio, I thought I would just kind of maybe talk about radio for a little bit. I've just jotted down some ideas of things that radio people might be interested in. You know, radio's changed drastically in the last few years, especially since I was in it, long about the 60s and early 70s. You know, that's... my career pretty much followed the Beatles. You know, when they showed up in America, it was pretty much when I first began trying to be a disc jockey, and I got to play all those wonderful records that when you first heard the Beatles. And later on, I played all that stuff right on up through the wonderful summer of Sgt. Pepper. You remember that summer when Sgt. Pepper was coming out of every radio in the country, and that was a nice time to be a disc jockey because I got to play all that stuff. But anyway, I thought I'd just kind of go back over some ideas and give you an idea of what radio was like in those days. If you are here to listen to 60s rock and roll radio, I don't have any for you this time. I'm still trying to get it. If you or somebody you know has any audio of any of the Big Ape disc jockeys who were around between the sign-on of the station in 1958 until the station was finally sold from the Brennan family back around 1970 or so. I'd love to have those audios. If you'd send them, I'll take care of them, and I will post them here for people to enjoy for a long time. As I said, radio changed drastically, and since that time, nowadays, as I understand it, it's all computerized. You just drop and drag commercials and records. You don't even have to listen to the record anymore. You just grab hold of it with a pointer and drag it over and drop it where you want it. If you have a station break or you have to read something, you can read it and record it. If you don't do it right, you get to do it over and then just drag it and drop it and it's just like that. I have heard that a disc jockey nowadays can put together a 4-hour show in about 45 minutes. And of course, it lacks all semblance of any context to when it actually happened. So that's radio now, and I'm glad I was in it a long time ago when it was a lot more fun, I think. A couple of things I want to mention. First of all, I'm glad you're here. There are at least 2 other Honest Johns posting to YouTube. One of them's a preacher and one of them's a comedian, and I am neither. I want to start out by mentioning the sign that was out front of the Big Ape Studios just south of Orange Park. I've got a picture of it up here. That's my daughter Tracy and my wife Belinda's favorite Aunt Peggy standing in front of it. This picture was probably made about I'm going to say 68, something like that, 69. And of course the sign has the ape logo. We didn't call them logos then. And also it has the Big Ape written on it. But the thing that really kind of interested me, and I thought I ought to mention to you, is down at the bottom where it says visitors welcome. Because that's the only radio station I ever knew of, and certainly the only one I ever worked for, when visitors were encouraged to come in. Normally at radio stations, the disc jockey, first of all, is sitting in some little room back in the back of the building, and he only comes out once in a while. The visitor who might come in is going to be greeted by a receptionist, and it's all going to be kind of formal. And she will call and say, "Do you have time?" And you say, "Yeah, I'll try to get, but I don't have a lot of time." And it's all very kind of awkward. But at the Big Ape, it was a whole different thing. We had a sign out front that said, "Come on in." There was a swimming pool there that was always open. We had a big flagstone lobby behind a glass front of the building and partly around the swimming pool came inside the lobby. And the disc jockey sat in front of a big window, and it had a control board in front of him, of course, but you could see over that. And outside the big window was the lobby. Over here, if we looked over, we could see the swimming pool, what was going on over there. And to our right was the entrance to the studio, and the transmitter room was out there. We were right there with the public. First of all, and also we had a drawer, kind of like a bank teller drawer, where they shove it out and you can put stuff in and come back in. That's the way we got requests. It allowed people to come into the station and make a request, and me to get it and react to it fairly quickly without having unnecessary and awkward interaction. Whenever I had a record that was long enough or a break because of news or something, I could go out and talk to people, or, it was just sort of a normal, natural thing. We weren't strangers to them. And the interaction was very informal. That was, I think, one of the things that made the Big Ape what it was. It had that sort of cultural, corporate culture of interaction with listeners. That was true in a lot of ways. We did a lot of remotes, and we went to dances, and we went to public events and things like that. And we did that so we could know who our audience was and have some confidence that we were doing what the audience wanted us to do. One of the reasons I know that it was important to that was because when the station was sold, I worked for the new owners for a while, and their corporate desire to interact with the public was completely different, because first of all, they brought the sales force out to the Orange Park studios and set up desks all in the lobbies. They closed off the swimming pool, filled it up, and the little small parking lot outside was full of salespeople's cars and all kinds of things like that. It was just not a friendly place to come in anymore. And I really felt that. I just kind of got disoriented and lost. I didn't know what you guys wanted to hear. I didn't have any confidence in what we were doing, and so I didn't last very long. But I did want to mention that sign. I think it represents what made the Big Ape what it was. If I do some of these talks over a time, if you guys are interested in them, I want to talk a few times about brushes I've had with famous people in different ways, and some of the stories are interesting, so I'll get into one of those. A very minor one was, and it was a very nice thing that happened to me. I met and worked with Milton Berle's brother, or it might have been his nephew. I recall it as being his brother, but Belinda thinks it was his nephew, so it was one of those. And that's it. It was just a couple of people away from greatness, I guess. He was a nice guy. He worked in sales, and I enjoyed working with him. I was listening to some of these posts that I have put up here the other night, and I was enjoying listening to Alan Sanzerchek. And I noticed again, I was surprised again that he played Don't Bogart That Joint, My Friend. It was very unlike him, and I asked him about it. I said, why did you play that record? It's not like you. And he said, well, that was because Alan Facemeyer was in the studio with me and requested it. Alan was the guy who ran the Underground Circus show on the Big Ape on Saturday nights. It turned out to be a really important show. He played some really heavy rock and roll and blues and stuff like that. So that's why he played the record. The touch with bravery that I had was I played The Pusher on Sunday afternoons. God damn the Pusher, and he doesn't just say it once; he say it over and over and over. But I put it on one Sunday afternoon, and I felt pretty good about it. Got some nice compliments on it, and no hassle from management. So I think I played that a few times on Sunday afternoons. A word about Sunday afternoons. I had 6 hours on Sunday afternoons, had 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and then 6 hours on Sunday. We often had remotes on Saturday too. But the Sunday show was different because, during the week, even in the 4-hour show, you need a break once in a while. And we always had news people there who came in and read the news. So the disc jockey, I could put on a fairly long record leading into the news and leave. And the newsman would come in and sit down, or a news lady, I think it was always men then, surprise, surprise. But he would come in and do the news, and then he would play the record that I had chosen to come out with. And if I put two long records especially, along with 5 minutes of news, I had a nice break. I had time to go outside, go to the bathroom, or smoke a cigarette, which I did profusely in those days, or just chat with visitors. And sometimes I wore a bathing suit, just go jump in the pool for a few minutes and come out and dry out and then go play disc jockey again. But that was sort of exclusive to the Big Ape too. But on Sundays, it was like 6 hours and I didn't have any news people. So I had to do all the news and sports and everything myself, which was not only a little bit of additional work to prepare for that, but it also kept me from having any break times. So that last 2 hours on Sunday afternoon, I tended to be a little laid back and tired and brave. Speaking of don't bogart that joint, my friend, I thought I'd talk just a minute about drugs back in those days. I know there were a lot of drugs around, but maybe it was because we were kind of isolated out there in Orange Park. But, there were a lot of people who came into the station. And the only drugs that I saw at all, other than alcohol, was some marijuana. Actually, somebody gave me some hash one time, but I had no idea how to use it, so I just kind of wasted that. Once in a while, in the request drawer, I'd find a joint, which was always nice. But I didn't smoke much marijuana at all. I tried it on the air, and that was just a disaster. Couldn't do that at all. So it was marijuana, but it wasn't a problem. I never saw it as a problem at all. Never saw any overt use of it. The drug that really hurt a lot of people I knew was, of course, alcohol. That took out some really, really good people. I want to tell you about meeting a friend at the Big Ape. When I was in radio, when Belinda and I were traveling around in radio, we worked different stations, and we always made friends there, and we always said, well, we'll keep in touch, but you never do. But on Friday afternoons at the Big Ape, there was usually a whole bunch of kids around because it was after school, weekend ahead, and a lot of times they'd come out to the Big Ape and just kind of hang out for a while, request a few songs. Sometimes they'd go swimming, usually not, just mostly to meet friends. And I kept getting a request on Friday afternoons, almost always for a Neil Young or for a John Lennon Beatle record. And always at the bottom of the request there would be a little saying, something kind of cute, nothing sexy or anything like that, but just something clever. And I decided I was going to figure out who was doing that because I didn't know. So I kept a real good close look on the request drawer, and every time somebody dropped something in, I'd go over and pick it up so I could tell who dropped it. And sure enough, I picked it up one time, and it was a request for a Neil Young record from this little hippie girl I saw standing out in front of the window. She was just as cute as a button, and she had round curly hair. She had on her John Lennon gold frame glasses. She had on kind of a peasant dress, and she was just really cool. And so I put on a record and ran out and introduced myself to her and told her how much I enjoyed the request and I appreciated it. And we talked for a few minutes, and then I went back in and finished my show. But that evening, I mentioned it to Belinda. I said, I met this little girl out at the station today, and she was really interesting. I think you'd like her. So the next Friday afternoon, Belinda and Tracy came out, and sure enough, Brandy showed up. Her name was Brandy. She and Belinda just became immediate fast friends, and we've all been close friends ever since. We go down to Florida quite often and visit them. They still live in Florida, and they're retired attorneys now. So that's the story of meeting Brandy. One of the disappointments that I had in radio, this was before I came to the Big Ape, when the Beatles came through, I think it was in '65. These years are past, and I really didn't do the research I should have. But Belinda and I went with a tour guide and a bus load of people down to Atlanta to see the Beatles. That was an interesting experience. The next year, the Beatle tour came through. They were going to play Washington, D.C., and Belinda came to me. I was on the air at WHPE in High Point at that time. Belinda ran the traffic in the office. She typed all the logs and did all those kinds of things. Plus, she had her FCC license, and she was able to tend the transmitters. And that's the way we'd sort of always done things, and that's the way we were doing it then. But anyway, she said, why don't we get a busload of kids and take them to Washington? And I said, well, okay, we can try to do that. But this was at the time when John Lennon had made his unfortunate comparison between the popularity of the Beatles and the popularity of Jesus. And so, the shit hit the fan. A lot of radio stations were banning Beatle records. They weren't playing them. That didn't last very long. They were burning Beatle albums, and preachers were screaming and yelling, and it was just kind of a mess. So I thought, well, I think we can probably fill up a bus. So we started, and actually we wound up filling up 2 buses. And Belinda planned the whole thing. It was $15 a piece for transportation up and back and for your Beatle tickets. But she also arranged for us to get into a press conference with the Beatles. So we rode the buses up and then left one of them in charge of the chaperones and jumped in a cab and took off for the press conference. And we got there, and it was. I think these press conferences that year are here on YouTube somewhere. You can look, but you'll see they're just accusative and they're negative and they're apologetic and they're arrogant and embarrassing. But we did get to meet the Beatles, and that was nice. But I was hoping it would be one of those, get together and kid around and do all those kinds of things. But it was a lot gloomier than that. So that's one of my disappointments. But I'm glad I got to go, and I thank Belinda for that. I want to talk about Belinda for a couple of minutes here. She and I met when she was a freshman and I was a junior in high school, and we just hit it off immediately. We got married 6 years later. We have a daughter, and we are living in North Carolina now. We are retired. And Belinda has dementia. That's one of the reasons I haven't been posting here lately. I first noticed it in 2013, and of course it was mild then, and it progressed very slowly up until fairly recently. I went through a period when I had contracted caretakers in the house to help out, just so I could go get the groceries and do the things I had to do. Eventually it reached the point that it was just not safe to keep her here in the house anymore. She was talking about wondering and wanting to go back home, and of course the home she was talking about was long gone. So I eventually had to put her in memory care. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But it's my responsibility. I have to do what I have to do, and it's hard. But she's taken care of. She's safe, and she is not very happy, but she's safe. So that's all I can ask for at this time. She was the light of my life. I was never much of a people person. She was. She just lit up a room. She could talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime about anything. She was industrious. She was clever. She was a beautiful woman. We just had a wonderful life together, emotionally and physically and every other way. She was a beautiful part of my life for a long, long time, and she's in trouble now, and I miss her already. I'm here in the house by myself, and that's not very pleasant. But it's one of those major transitions in your life, and you go through a bunch of them. This is one of the hardest. But she and I made it through the ones before, so we'll make it through this one, and I'll be okay. But just kind of bear with me here at this YouTube site. I'll get audio when I can. If I find that you're interested in these little talks like this one, then I'll do some more. I've got a bunch of stories. Radio was a wonderful life for me, and I appreciate it, and I'm happy to share it. So until whatever happens, until you come back next time, I hope you'll have a wonderful life.